Oh boy, I know how this goes. I know how Shauna operates. She smiles, and then they fall in love, and then they get married, and then she changes her name to Shauna Malway Wyatt. Or he's gonna be really progressive and change his name to Ben Wyatt Malway Tweep. God, I am so annoyed that he would hypothetically do that.
I'm gonna remind you that the reason you're not dating him is because you decided to run for city council.
Oh, so just because I can't go out with him, someone else can?
Oh boy.
Wow.
Okay. I'm sure this is nothing. Okay, well, that was definitely something.
I gotta stop this. I gotta keep them away from each other for the rest of their lives.
How are you gonna do that?
Unclear.
Well, good morning. Well, it is the 9 a.m. service, so I didn't expect more of a response than that. Good morning. We're glad that you're here. I'm very happy to see you. If you're joining us at another campus, we're so glad that you are. If you're online, I can't see you, but you can see me. It's always a weird thing to say. Hey, we are showing these little clips as intros, and I realized, you know, it would be nice if we just said, here's the show if you find that interesting, but we don't have a partnership with any shows like that. We're not that big of a deal. But glad that you're here. We hope you've enjoyed this series. My name's Preston. I'm the spiritual formation pastor here at North Point, and today we're ending the entire series, the Dead Aim series, talking about envy, which is like so, aren't you excited to talk about envy? And we're talking about envy, okay. Now, when I think backwards, to like, what were the first times? I'm sure I was born with this innate ability to be envious of people. But when I think backwards, when was the first time I remember being able to be like, envy was growing in my heart? It was probably middle school. High school, right in there. I wasn't really good at a whole lot in middle school. In fact, I got picked on a lot. This isn't a counseling session where I'm going to tell you and you're going to be like, oh, and then you give me a hug in the lobby. That's fine, but that's not what this is about. I wasn't the best at sports. I did javelin for a semester of a semester. That's like 2 weeks of the semester, okay? You know what javelin is? You run and then you throw a stick. Javelin is literally running and throwing a stick. So if you can't make it in javelin, you can't make it in sports. And so I wasn't good at javelin. As far as book smarts, there were always people smarter than me. It was hard for me. I would study until I realized, man, people don't study and they're better and smarter. That wasn't really my thing. In middle school and high school, it was just hard. There were always people stronger and better and not always smarter, though, because I'm going to tell you about this bully. Like I said, I was picked on a lot. There was a bully that was taller, stronger, but not smarter, okay? And I had to figure out, how do I make it so this bully doesn't pick on me anymore? So I was in newspaper class. I was one of the benefits of being on staff at like a high school journalism class is you have access to a copy machine. That's one of the major benefits, okay? If you don't know what a copy machine is, well, just look it up later. But copy machine, there's a part where you can open the top and you put a piece of paper, typically paper down, and then you close it and then you hit copy and it copies it. Well, I had this plan. I was going to be smarter than this bully, and I had a class later with him and I knew what I was going to do. So I look around, I go to the copy machine, I look around, nobody's around. I've never confessed this publicly, okay? They say confession is good for the soul, and so I'm about to do my soul a solid. So I look around, nobody's around. I open the copy machine, and I Xerox copied, a full moon, okay? I Xerox copied, and it was cold. And then, don't worry, it's black and white. I wasn't going to waste, color on this printer. And then I folded it up and put it in my pocket for later. So then we're in the last period of the day. It was math class. And I'm sitting down in math class, and a few chairs over is this bully. Bigger, stronger, not smarter. And I'm finishing the test. I'm done with the test way before he's done with his test. But I need him to go and walk his test up first. And so I'm just watching him. I'm like, okay, this is such a hard problem. I'm trying to make it look like and then he finishes, he stands up, and he walks over, puts his test in the tray. Well, I walk over behind him, I pull out my Xerox full moon, and I staple it to his test. And then I put my test in the tray. And who do you think got suspended for mooning the teacher? He did, not me. There's no way to pin that on me. I was smarter. I outsmarted. Listen, the moral of that story? Well, actually, the moral of that story is revenge is a dish best served cold, okay? That's the moral of that story. What I want you to get out of that story is there's always someone with more like these two letters here, E-R, There's always someone smarter and faster and richer and taller and skinnier. And if you're not comparing like that, you're like, okay, well, their girlfriend's prettier, or their boyfriend's cuter, or they're more talented. There's always someone with more always. And I don't want to say you do this. I would never say you do this. I mean, I can admit this for me. We're already in confession mode for Preston. So here's something I tend to do. I don't like this about myself. What I tend to do is if I don't have more I look for someone who's less and has less than my because then I feel superior. Now, if you went to our master class last Sunday about the Enneagram, you'll understand what I mean. If you're a 3 on the Enneagram, you don't care about you care about est. Like, you want to be the best, the richest, the fastest, the smartest. You want to be est. And it is an ongoing competition. And what it does inside of us is it creates envy. I need to be more, and I need more. And you keep going. And if you don't have it, then you look down on people. Envy, there's no good side to envy. There's not. And you know what kind of perpetuates this envy in our culture is this app called Facebook, or let's kind of focus on Instagram. Okay? You know the good thing about Instagram? No? Okay. Let's talk about Instagram. So I don't know either. Instagram just shows you people's highlight reels all the time. In fact, I remember being on vacation and we're sitting on the beach. I don't remember when this was, but I look over and I see people that are like halfway in the water kind of modeling, but kind of trying to act normal. And then I see other people taking pictures of these people. And I'm like, to my wife, Lisa, I said, what are they doing? And she said, oh, those are Instagram models. And those, they travel here and get pictures. And I'll just be honest, I started laughing. Now, was that me feeling superior? Maybe. I wasn't trying to, but because I'm like, wow. When they are done and they go back to their chairs and there's no community around them, and then they're just scrolling, posting, more they got to be the est. And then I felt bad for anyone on the other side of the screen, like all of us, who think if I just had that vacation, if I just had that look, if I just had that, and I'm like, but it's not real. And so I put it in your notes like this, and it's really important that we get this. There is no win in comparison. You can't win. Envy makes it so you can't win, but you think you can win. You cannot win in the games of and the games of est. You can win against a bully, but you can't win in real life, okay? Against everyone that you think you're in comparison with. And we are in this competition with people that don't even know they're in a competition. Here's what envy is. Envy is discontentment fueled by comparison. It's ongoing. It never stops. There's a lot of reasons you could have discontentment, but when it's fueled by comparison, that's envy. And now envy starts to grow. And it doesn't seem to go away. It's so dangerous. We talk about these 7 sins that are typically called the 7 deadly sins. This one's actually so deadly. I want to be clear. There's no good side to envy. It hasn't done any good in the world. In fact, the Bible talks about it in a way, one place in the Bible in the book called Proverbs says, envy rots your bones, and the imagery of your inside deteriorating away. Or you could say it like this, envy does violence to your soul. It's very bad for you. And anything that does violence to your soul always makes its way into the world in disorder. Let me explain that for a second. So envy rots your bones, and it's going to create disorder in the world, because when you're envious, when you're like, if I could just have what they have, and it stirs up discontentment, what ends up happening is we gossip, right? We talk bad about people because we're like, yeah, but they're not actually that good, and we gossip. We start spending our money in ridiculous ways. We spend our money to impress people we don't know and that don't know us. And we spend our money because we're just envy stirring up. We're discontent. And it's stirred up by comparison. It creates such disorder in our lives. And then if we're getting real personal in our relationships, not just with other people and ourselves, we look in the mirror and you're like, I'll never be. Envy. It kills. It's deadly. It kills our relationships, and most important, what we're going to see in the Bible is it kills our peace. It kills our ability to enjoy life. Because here's what's crazy. The people you're envious of, the people that you see, or the things that you're envious of, the things that have your attention, there's probably at least, I'm going to throw a number out there. There's probably in the world, let's say at least 1 million people, that if they saw your life and they knew you, and they started comparing themselves to you, they would be stirred up by discontentment and they would want your life. And then I would say this, those million probably have another million that if they saw you see what I'm saying? There's no win in comparison. There's a guy in the Bible that his name's Solomon, and at a young age, he could pray for really whatever he wanted, and it seems like God was going to honor that prayer. And he prayed for wisdom, and God honored that prayer. And so in the Bible, he's referred to as one of the wisest men that's ever lived. Now, I don't know if you're a Jesus follower or a Bible-believing person or not, but even from a purely historical standpoint, you'd be able to say the character of Solomon had it all. He had wealth. He had, I wouldn't say this is a good thing. He had wives, plural. Okay, he had a lot of different things, but he had it all, and he was very, very wise. And he wrote a book called Ecclesiastes. Ecclesiastes is not something I would say you should read before bedtime. It's kind of sad, but he does talk about envy. Here's what he says about envy. In chapter 4, he says, "And now I saw that all toil and all achievement spring from one person's envy of another." That's a wild thought. You know the Hebrew word for all? It's all. Okay, we're going to read it again then. "And I saw that all toil, everything, all the achievement Solomon has seen. He's rubbed shoulders with the prestigious people of his day. And he's writing and saying, and I've noticed it's driven by envy for one another. This too is meaningless, a chasing after the wind." You're going to see that phrase over and over and over again. A chasing after the wind. A chasing after the wind. How stupid to chase the wind. We've had a lot of wind in Springfield in the most random times and sometimes at night. And then I've woken up and been like, how's our patio furniture in the street? You know? Some of you are like, I thought my tree had strong enough roots to not tip over. Imagine chasing the wind. Imagine you feel the breeze and you're chasing the wind. What are you going after? What are you trying to catch? You're chasing the wind. In fact, you do that enough and the wind's strong enough, it's actually going to start to drive your life. It's going to start to direct your steps. This is what Solomon's getting at. It's so meaningless. The imagery he has is you're chasing something you can never have. And anyone watching you from the outside would call it, I don't know, dumb or meaningless. The word envy is derived from a Latin word that means non-sight. Can't see clearly. It's non-sight. There's a parable, it's not in the Bible, it's just a parable, it's a story that helps us learn things. And it's about an eagle, a talking eagle, so it's not true, okay? But it's about a talking eagle that was envious of another eagle that could fly higher, more than this eagle. So this eagle is watching this other eagle fly, and it gets envious and goes to an archer and says, hey, I think that eagle would look good in your house, stuffed and all this stuff. And so the archer says, okay, but I don't have any feathers on my arrow. And so the eagle says, well, you can have one of my feathers to help it fly more, and plucks the feather out of its wing, and then the archer puts it on the arrow, shoots the arrow, and guess what? That's not enough feathers. It's just not enough. And so they said, I need more feathers. And so the archer says, okay, or the eagle says, okay, and then pulls more feathers. The archer puts it on the arrow and shoots the arrow, doesn't hit the eagle. The eagle goes higher and higher, and it makes this eagle just more and more mad. And before you know it, this eagle loses itself. No feathers. Can't fly away. And because he couldn't fly away, the archer turns around and shoots this eagle instead of that eagle. Envy is you can't see clearly. You can't. And the way I put it in your notes is it blinds you. Let's talk about that. It blinds you. It makes it so you're just not able to see the person, right? If you're someone who believes every person has worth, right? I believe every person's made in the image of God. Envy makes it so you don't see the person, you see the possession. You see the power, you see the position, everything you want, but you don't see the person. And when you don't see the person, then no longer are we able to love one another, connect with one another, to serve one another. We are now saying, I need, because I'm discontent, because I'm comparing to what the person has. It blinds you. Envy binds you. It binds you. It attaches you to something that you should not be getting your identity from. By binding you, it's like all your attention, you know that. I don't even have to tell you this. You know exactly where I'm going with this. All your attention is wrapped up in the thing you don't have or in what you're not. That becomes you. And then the last one is it just makes you boil. Envy gets under your skin. It's this emotion that starts with our ability to observe something and get to know someone, but then it actually becomes emotional. Here's what I mean. It becomes your identity. You're like, I'm never going to be enough. I'm never going to have the type of relationship that, and it makes you boil on the inside. It's such an emotional thing that when you're by yourself and you look in the mirror, the person you see, you don't even like anymore because it's not the person that you're always looking at or the people that you're always looking at and that you're comparing yourself to. It rots you. Now, all this stuff, you're like, I'm so glad I came here on a Sunday morning to learn envy rots my bones. All I'm trying to do is to surface envy so we can take aim at it, okay? And to say this, we all deal with envy. And it's probably, I don't know, but it's probably at an all-time high right now because of the ability to see the highlight reel of everybody else's life. So anytime something is this emotional, it's really healthy that we make resolutions. Resolutions are kind of like this. We draw a line in the sand and we say, okay, I'm not going to cross this. Now, will you make the mistake of course you probably will, but to draw a line in the sand, say, I will not do that anymore. I'm not going to do that. Because when it's emotional, we then make an emotional decision to go against it. And so here's one of the things I put in your notes that I'm going to say, and then we're going to say it together. Because this is where Solomon, he keeps repeating this stuff, this idea of chasing the wind. So here's what it is. I will not chase after the wind. Okay? We're going to say it together. This is our line in the sand, and then we're going to move forward in this passage in the Bible. We're the line in the sand. Okay, repeat after me. I will not chase after the wind. That sounds silly to even say, but it sounds more silly to do. I will not chase after the wind. Well, we'll have a lot of options, probably, I don't know, in like 20 minutes to practice this resolution. Solomon then continues. He's going to actually continue, and he's going to say, when you feel envy, there's actually a few options that you have in life. This is what he goes on to do in verse 5. Ecclesiastes chapter 4, just the next 2 verses says this: fools fold their hands and ruin themselves. Better one handful with tranquility than 2 handfuls with toil and chasing after the wind. He uses this word we don't use often. I don't know how often you use the word tranquility. If you do use it a lot, you're going to sound very spiritual, okay? But it's peace. It's peace. And just think about that word, peace. It's enough. You have enough. You are enough. You don't have everything. We're not saying that. Doesn't mean you don't have improvements to be made. We're not saying that. It's peace, though. And he said, so when you face envy, there's a few options you have. One is you can fold your hands and let yourself ruin away. The other is you can have, it'll be like peace, but it's not going to be, you're not going to feel like you have everything, or you can just keep chasing things. It's like this. Imagine we're at a soccer game in Springfield during this massive heat wave, okay? I'm not making any claim on global warming. I'm just saying the globe is warm right now, okay? It's hot. It's hot everywhere you go. So, I don't know, it's 102? So we're sitting outside. If I were to sit there and just go, it is so hot, and I fold my hands and I just, oh, it's so hot, and I'm wasting away, and I fold my hands and I ruin, I'll actually burn. I'll first turn into a lobster with a massive sunburn, and then eventually, yes, it's just so hot, you'd waste away, you'd ruin. You're not doing anything. Or, Solomon says, what if you were there at the soccer game and you had one handful of water? This is enough. This is enough. This water bottle would be enough. That was my excuse to drink a water. This would be enough if I'm sitting at a soccer game. I'm like, it's hot outside. Go team, go. Okay. This is enough. It's not a ton, but this will be enough. And to sit there in peace and know I'm okay. I'll be okay. Or here's your third option. Or you could grab 2 pitchers and go, okay, it's so hot, I am going to run around in the heat. I'm going to find water, and I'm going to fill both these pitchers up, and they're going to be both for me, and one to pour over my head and one to drink, and then you just run. And you're like, where's the water? I need water. Where's the water? And you're just wasting away, and you're chasing the wind because you had enough, but you weren't content with enough. And when you start looking around and realizing other people have more water than me, you see what I'm saying? And he says, when you face, if you're drawing a line in the sand and you say, I'm not a wind chaser, I don't do that. I don't chase the wind. That means in every day you get a choice to make, to say, okay, I have enough today. It's enough today. This is actually a theme all throughout the Bible. God provides enough for the day. God provides enough for the day. I have enough. It's a choice you're able to make. And it actually kills envy because it creates in your heart not just gratitude, but contentment. And contentment can feel like boredom if we're addicted to envy. But you're not bored. We're content. I learned this, listen, I'm just confessing a lot of stories to you. I learned this early on in our marriage. Lisa and I were on a game show called Let's Make a Deal. I don't know if you've ever seen that game show. It's with Wayne Brady is the host of Let's Make a Deal. And you have to dress up to be in the audience. And she dressed up as a flower, and I dressed up as a bee. It was really cute. And I wish that we looked for a picture, and I'm so excited to tell you we couldn't find it. Okay? I can imagine. So, yeah, you can imagine. So we're sitting in the audience, And then Wayne Brady is, going from game to game to game and individuals. And then he's like, we need a couple. And you got like, I'm just ready to go. And then Lisa's, got these pedals around her head. And she's like, us. And he says, you two, come on down. And so we do. We come down. I know you're going to try to look this up. If you find it, send it to me. I couldn't find it. But we go down there. And then there's two chairs like this, back to back. And Lisa and I are back to back. We have a whiteboard, and he said, here's what we're going to do. We're going to show both of you 2 items. And if Lisa will go first, if she picks the same item, if she writes down on the whiteboard the same item that you write down, Preston, she gets that item. Same goes for you. And I'm like, easy. Now, we were only married a short amount of time at that time. I don't know if I would win or do better now, but I would hope to think I would. So the first item is this. The first thing they show us is a handbag, a really nice purse. I didn't know that they go by the term handbag, but a really nice purse. It was like, I think something around $2,000, worth $2,000. And they show her this. I'm like, oh, that's nice, I don't even typically hold a handbag, but that's a nice one. And then they said, or you can get a year's worth of manicures and pedicures. Okay. How many of you would say handbag? Raise your hand. Okay. How many of you say manicures and pedicures? Thank you. That's exactly what I wrote on the whiteboard. That's exactly what I wrote. Manicures and pedis. And she writes handbag, and we showed the camera, and he's like, oh, sorry. And later on, I'm like, Lisa, why would you choose that? She said, I was just going to sell the handbag for the money. Okay, so then for me, we still had a shot. For me, he goes, all right, here's the first thing we're going to show you. Curtain opens up. It's all these power tools. Power tools, big tool chests, and, something most people would be into, not me. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's cool. I might have even thought I could sell that for money, And then he said the next curtain was opened up, and it was a big flat screen TV, surround sound Bose stereo system, and all this stuff. And I'm not kidding. In my heart, I'm like, oh, that's better than my friends. Okay? I will have the best. Now, I will need the power tools to install the speakers, but we'll get there if we get there. So I write down TV and all this stuff, and she writes down TV, surround sound, and we show the camera, and everyone starts cheering. And Wayne Brady says, that is now yours. And on national television, in a bee outfit, I screamed. I was so excited. I couldn't contain myself. I screamed. And he said, or you can risk it all for what's behind curtain number 2. Okay. How many gamblers we have here? I'm just kidding. So I'm like, whoa, curtain number 2. Well, curtain number 2, I'm looking at curtain number 2. I'm like, there's a car could fit behind curtain number 2, right? There's a lot of big items that could fit behind curtain number 2. And then I had the audience going, curtain 2, curtain 2. And I look at Lisa. I'm like, help. And she said, you won that. You make the choice. That was her way of saying, your funeral, okay? And I say, curtain 2. And it opens. And I lost everything. It was a zonk. Wah, wah, wah. It was actually the sound effect, okay? Like, I had it. I had in one hand, like, be at peace, Preston. Be at peace. You actually, in that moment, had way more than you could have afforded. But we're always wanting the next curtain, aren't we? We're always wanting, what's behind curtain number 2? What's behind curtain number 2? This is what envy does. Envy says, I know I have something and I should be at peace, but like, next curtain, please. Next curtain, please. Next curtain, please. And we are rotting away in the process and losing everything. And before you know it, you're like, oh, I should have just been at peace. There's going to be a phrase that Solomon says next where he talks about, actually, envy keeps you from just enjoying life. Just enjoy. Let's read that part. It's the next 2 verses. Ecclesiastes 4:7-8. Again, I saw something meaningless under the sun. There's a man all alone, which, pause if you haven't gotten this by now. An envious heart does not bring community closer, it pushes them away. Because you're like, I want to be better than you. I want more than you. And so it's, of course, there's a man all alone. He had neither son nor brother. There was no end to his toil, yet his eyes were not content with his wealth. For whom am I toiling, he asked. Who am I doing this for? And then he says, and why am I depriving myself of enjoyment? This too is meaningless, a miserable business. A miserable business. The question, who am I doing this for? He says, for whom am I toiling? For whom am I, who do I do this for? Maybe you're here and you're like, well, the reason I work so hard and I'm working at a promotion and I'm doing all these things, I'm doing it for my kids. I'm just for my family, just to get ahead in life and to set them up for wealth in the next generation. I'm doing it for my kids. No, you're not. Your kids, hold on to them. Be content and be at peace. And sometimes we do things for people that aren't even alive anymore. You might have had a mom or dad that passed away, and you're like, if only they could see what I've accomplished in life. I am so much further ahead. And you're like, who are you doing this for? Who are you toiling for nonstop in comparison to others? Who? Not for God, because God can't be impressed with our achievements and our accomplishments. He can't. God is the God of the universe. I mean, when you can speak everything into existence and when you can predict your own death and resurrection, well, then maybe that would be impressive. But until you get there, who are you doing this for? And why are we not enjoying life? Why are we not just going, today I have enough? So envy surfaces up. We've been talking about it, and I put in your notes just 3 ways to take aim at envy. Ready? Here's the first one. Look to others for inspiration, not imitation. It's okay to be inspired by people. People's stories are very inspiring. A lot of your stories here are so inspiring to me. In fact, there's even on staff at North Point, we're always talking about, hey, did you hear so-and-so's story? Did you, in a good way, okay, in a good way. Did you hear so-and-so's story? Oh my goodness, do you know what they made it through? Look to each other for inspiration, but not imitation. You weren't made to be that person. You're made to be you. And be inspired by that. And then be inspired also by what other people are doing. The second one is count your blessings, not your neighbors. It's an old school, count your blessings. If your grandma ever told you, all right, you just need to count your blessings and be thankful for what you have. Grandma was right. Counting your blessings is a big way to kill envy and to take aim at envy. My counselors told me before, have a gratitude journal. Now, that's not unique to my counselor. That's something that a lot of people do, a gratitude journal where you just, as you journal, you write down, what am I thankful for? What do I have? What do I have in one hand that's bringing me peace? So I'm not chasing the wind, right? In, I don't know, in a month or two, about a month, September 17th, we're launching our small groups across all campuses and across the city, really. And a big part of our small groups is this thing called JXP, the Jesus Experience. And that's where we go through a book of the Bible together. We're going to be going through the book of Acts. And we just read the Bible and ask questions, and we practice it together. And what's amazing about the book of Acts, I'm going to give something away in the book of Acts. In the last part of the 2nd chapter, you have that Luke, the author of Acts, tells us that the early church, the early Jesus followers, were selling their possessions and giving them away so that they can then use the resources to help the people in need. One of the things that marked the early church is they did not let envy grow. They didn't compare themselves to the people around them. They looked to the people around them to see, what do they need to be complete? What do they need? What do they need? They sold land. They sold their own goods, or they gave it away if that's what was needed. In the early church, all throughout that book, you'll see, hey, this is a way they really fight envy. You'll have an opportunity if you want to lead a group like that. Caleb will talk more about it, but I just encourage you, if you're like, I want to help actually lead a group of people, reading the book of Acts and doing what Acts says, sign up for that. We're doing training next week here at Springfield, and then it's all on the website, but just signing up to be a group leader, you would help people to kill envy, not just kill envy, all the deadly sins as they lean into the Jesus way. We count our blessings. That's what the church has always done. That's what Jesus followers have always done. And then here's the last thing. We are be resolved that you are not a wind chaser. You're not a wind chaser. You're not a wind chaser. There's a line in the sand. I don't chase the wind, okay? It's like when I'm, even as a parent, when I'm emotional, one of the lines in the sand, I say, I don't yell at my kids. I don't yell. Anytime something is emotional, you make a resolution. I don't run around looking for more. If God gives me more, this is great. I'll be content with that. But if I have less, I'll be content with that as well. And envy, by the way, is like a core piece of so many stories that we know. So many of them. I mean, you can talk a kid's story like Toy Story. Okay, Toy Story, what is driving Woody in the Toy Story? He is envious of Buzz's relationship with Andy. You could look at one of my favorite movies, The Count of Monte Cristo. In The Count of Monte Cristo, you have someone who has a great, I think fiance, girlfriend, and then and just has a good life, and his best friend is envious and sends him into prison. It's all about envy. It's all about envy. You could have Beauty and the Beast. Beauty and the Beast is why did the prince turn into a beast? Well, because he had a spell put on him because he just wanted more until he was content. One of the stories that pops up that really, I think, shows envy the most is Snow White. I don't know if you remember that story. There's been so many iterations of that. But Snow White is this story of this queen that asks a mirror, mirror on the wall, you know it, right? Who's the fairest of them all? And which means who's the prettiest of them all? And then the mirror says, Snow White, not you. Wait, there's someone with more? Prettier? I'm not the prettiest. And it rots her on the inside. And before you know it, it actually shows up, like we talked about, on the outside. And she actually, the movie ends, she is this nasty-looking witch that is the opposite of what she wanted to be, isn't she? Envy rots our bones. And then you have Jesus come on the scene that doesn't have a lot. Like the one that we just sang about, the God who's come to us in the person of Jesus Christ, doesn't have a lot. He even said something like this. He said, foxes have holes and birds have nests, but the Son of Man about himself has no place to rest his head. Jesus didn't have a lot, but he had everything. And he made that known. Hey, I came to give life and to give life abundantly. He didn't have a lot, but he had everything. And he didn't ever have envy in his heart. He saw the person in front of him. And he would see you in the same way. And I think when we read the Bible and the words of Jesus, it's helpful to know, I think what Jesus would say would be, you don't have to have more to have everything. You don't have to have more to have everything. In fact, not having more will help you have everything. So he comes in the most humble way to show us the way to life, abundant life, yes, after this life, but also in this life. So I'm going to pray for us, and I just want you to know, my hope is that every day practice those three things, okay? We're inspired by people, we count our blessings, and we just make this resolution. I'm not chasing the wind. And the person I follow, Jesus Christ, doesn't chase the wind either. And so neither do I. We're going to go from this prayer into a video where it's about serving in kids. Now, all these deadly sins, let me just say this, all these deadly sins, you can take aim at every single one through serving because it gets you outside of yourself and helping other people. So let me pray for us, and I just want you to consider as you watch some of my favorite volunteers, I just want you to consider, is that your next step, serving, or what would your next step be? Let me pray for us. God, thank you that you've given us not just this story in Ecclesiastes, but that you have given us yourself and your story as you walked among us and you showed us you don't have to have more to have everything. And in fact, I pray that you'd help us to, as we follow you, that we would let go of things for the sake of others, that we wouldn't hold on tighter, and that God, that we would continue to fight against envy, that it doesn't rot our bones. And we pray that you'd restore to us, like it says in your word, restore to us the joy of finding you. In Jesus' name, amen.